The volume of technical problems. It's a wonder this show ever gets off the ground sometimes. And it's always right before we go live. Welcome, everybody, to the post New Year's Day edition of the Under the Dome podcast. Bob, there was a lot of football this weekend. There was Saints football. There was the Dallas Detroit debacle at the end of that game. And then it was college football, which seemed like they at least try and get it right. Um, you know, just watching the Alabama Michigan game, there was like two or three turnovers and completions they got buzzed and they got it right.
Mm-hmm.
The NFL just doesn't seem to know how to do that.
Alan, I think it's because
So
the
how are you
NFL
doing
does.
tonight, Bob?
I'm good. I'm good. Happy New Year to you and your family. Happy New Year to all you guys out there. And yeah, the college football officiating system and replay, more specifically replay system, seems to be much smoother than what the NFL is. But that's because, and you can call me a conspiracy theorist if you want, the NFL doesn't want to get it right. The Goodell regime wants things a certain way, wants certain teams, wants certain players to be favored. And as you always point out, week after week, especially in a game between two marquee teams, it almost seems like, no, it does seem like officiating makes sure that damn thing stays close down to the wire.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we've seen it all year. And Detroit, Dallas just really iced it for everybody. Three times they went for it on on the 2 point conversion, and the first time was a perfect play, and
Mm-hmm.
the league still couldn't get it right. It's mind boggling how their attitude is as long as the game ends, this is fine. They get what they want, close games. Um, you really get, if you really want to be a theorist, you really get the matchup you wanted in week 18. Dallas versus Philadelphia for the division title. I mean, if I didn't know that the Eagles were really trying against the Cardinals, it's almost like the Eagles deliberately lost that game to make that game close,
Mm-hmm.
to make that final game important. It's just, I don't know. It's just ridiculous. There's no other way to put it. It feels very WWE-ish.
Yeah, it does, and I've called the Super Bowl the WWE Super Bowl ever since 2018. And the no call fiasco. That's when it hit me. I'm like, this is WWE. It's every bit sports entertainment as much as it is sports. Fixed, folks, no, because it's absolutely impossible to do that. Scripted, maybe to a certain extent. But listen, you can't. You're talking about 53 competitors, competitive athletes on 32 different teams, along with competitive coaches. You're never going to be able to hand out a script, as it were, at the beginning of the season or even at the beginning of each week and say that this is what's going to happen. No, these players are still trying to win. It's legitimate. It's a legitimate competitive attempt on the field. It's off the field, on the sidelines, and more specifically from the league office and the officiating. That's where the games are tilted towards a certain outcome, and more often than not, they're going to do whatever they can to get that outcome.
I really felt that way watching that 49ers Ravens game,
Mm-hmm.
they were going to make sure that incredibly obvious that Lamar Jackson's the league MVP. Um, just because the timing of the calls, the timing of the penalties that killed any 49er drive that really had a shot to get something going, and it's not, they didn't want the 49, they weren't trying to make the 49ers lose, but they
No.
wanted to make it as difficult as possible because it happened to McCaffrey too.
Mm-hmm.
And, you're calling holding calls on the 49ers. You're not calling the holding calls on the Ravens. And it's that kind of thing. So here I am. I'm watching this. We'll get into the Saints Tampa game now. I'm watching the Saints Tampa game, and the Saints basically have this game won 20 or 23-0. Then this miracle drive happens for the Bucks. One play, the Bucks. It was number 69. He was the one, or 67. He was the one who was having the most problems out there. He had a dude in a friggin' headlock on third down. No flag thrown, and
Mm-hmm.
just so happens a big completion to get them out of the hole, to get this drive going, to get this game closer. And it just, when the 2-point conversion happened, and I'm like, the dude stepped out of bounds. I
Yeah.
saw it. I was shocked that they came back because the official, I like Kevin Burkhardt and I like Greg Olson calling
Yeah.
the game. But they never said, hey, this is under review. They were kind of surprised, too. Their spotter didn't get it. No one picked it up. And all of a sudden, the flag comes out and says, oh, illegal touch, and he stepped out of bounds. And, of course, when they run the replay, because they never run the replay on these questionable plays until after the officials start looking at it, he clearly stepped out of bounds and came back in. But I said, look at this shit here. What was the line on this game? Because that's what they're allowing right now. They're going to beat the line, and it just, I just couldn't believe the stuff that the Bucs suddenly could just move this ball at will. And I'm like, the Saints defense isn't giving up that much yardage. They just stopped calling the penalties. That was holding them back, and that's how you manipulate a game.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, your impressions of this Saints Bucs game, were you shocked at how well the offense was executing early in this game?
Yeah, very. And in fact, I said this earlier on a different show. In the 2 years under Dennis Allen, this was their best all-around performance, and between coaches, offense, defense, special teams, team effort, the way the team came out very motivated, and tenacious early on, the game plans, offensive and defensive on each side of the football. I predicted Tampa Bay to win this game and win it rather easily. So I was very surprised, specifically with the offense. As you asked, because Dennis Allen has always put together a very good defensive game plan against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, even in the games that last few games that they've lost against them. It was the offense that I figured would really, really struggle in this one. And then you have Alvin Kamara going out midway through the second quarter. I thought that the offense would come to an absolute standstill then. And while it slowed down, you still had complementary players like Juwan Johnson and Jamal Williams stepping up and making key plays and key moments. The offensive line played one of their best games of the season, not giving up a single sack and getting enough push for the running attack to at least maintain possessions, and pick up a couple of first downs before you maybe had to punt it away in the second half. So yeah, I love the way the offense attacked the middle of the field too, not just with Jawan, but with Foster Moreau and a couple of slants and crossers to Shaheed and Olave. I thought Carr was very decisive in his decisions. Frankly, I think Carr's played very well over the last 6 or 8 weeks. A few games notwithstanding. But yeah, this was the type of offense, efficiency wise, that we all felt that we would have seen from the beginning of the year.
And that was the word I used to describe Carr and that team was efficient. They were efficient moving the ball. I tried to put the picture up, but I couldn't share the picture. But, that catch by Juwan Johnson on third down the middle of the field and getting them out of the hole. They didn't score or anything on that drive, but it got them out of the hole. And it really flipped the field because the Tampa Bay was really counting on, okay, we'll make them go 3 and out after that interception by Alontae Taylor. We'll get the ball about midfield and we can score. But when they got the ball to almost midfield, then they punted, and now you're deep in your own territory again. It really sucked all the life out of Tampa. And that's what really surprised me more than anything else was just how lethargic Tampa was and how, with so much on the line. And it didn't take long. It was like 1 or 2 plays that went wrong for them. And they just kind of, oh, well, we'll get it next week because we play Tampa next week. I mean, we play Carolina next week. So we'll just take care of business then. There was no fight in that team at all. Even that comeback, it was like, you saw them on the sidelines and they're just kind of flat. They're not. I thought after they got their touchdown, I said, "Oh shit, here we go. They're going to come all fired up, make us go 3 and out, and then get a drive going and get this game closed and start all kinds of crap." But it never happened. It really didn't. They just had no energy in that game. It was like they didn't care. If you didn't know about it, it was like it was an elimination game for them, and they were already mentally checked out and said, "Yeah, we're going home after this." It was the kind of, I wouldn't say the Saints have done that kind of stuff, but it was the kind of performance that people expected the Saints to have in these last couple of games, especially after that Rams game.
You wouldn't say it. I will say it, and I have said it. It's exactly the way the Saints came out against the Rams, the Lions, the Vikings, the Jaguars, a couple of games last year. Basically, anytime these Dennis Allen teams in 2 years, have stared a big game in the face against a quality opponent, they've come out flat, unmotivated, listless, and both physically and mentally unprepared. The exact opposite was true for both teams, this Sunday, and that to me that was the biggest shock value of all.
Absolutely. And when the Saints had a setback, they weren't hanging their heads. They didn't quit on after Kamara got injured. They kept fighting, and it was an efficient game plan against the Bucs because what they were running was working. The Bucs had no answer for the Saints tight ends, none at all. Because I mean, if you treat Taysom Hill like a tight end, Taysom Hill scored as a tight end. Juwan Johnson scored as a tight end, had his best game as a Saint. Foster Moreau, got some critical catches. Olave pretty much he had a couple catches early, but he went to the sideline basically for a lot of the game to kind of rest his ankle because I know he had problems with his ankle, and most people didn't even realize he was gone. You know, um, it's true because I didn't have to go to him.
Yeah.
Shaheed got a couple of targets early, but they really didn't even use Shaheed. It was all tight ends and a physical brand of football against Tampa. So I'm not saying this is going to be something that's going to carry the next week. The Saints are a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. But for a week at least, they looked like the team, like you said, the team that we all thought we were going to get.
Yeah, and I love the physical brand of football that they came in with against Tampa Bay, not only offensively but defensively. And frankly, that's how Tampa Bay has beaten this team, New Orleans, in the last three times that they've met. They've just been more physical than them on both sides of the ball. And New Orleans came in acting like they wanted to prove something. And for one, I pray that they carry that chip on their shoulder and that mentality over into next week. Because remember Atlanta back in, what was it, week 12, Atlanta physically dominated these Saints on both sides of the football. So I hope that these guys have that in their memory and they see that on the film when they rewatch it this week, and that they match that kind of physical intensity on both sides of the ball again against the Falcons.
Absolutely, because despite Atlanta beating them up physically, you look at that game, how that game unfolded. You had multiple opportunities to win that game, and you threw them away, especially in the red zone. Carr's pick six, Taysom's fumble, A.T. Perry running the wrong route on the first drive. Just the mental mistakes they made in the game that cost them that game. If they don't make those mistakes, you kind of take Atlanta's running game out and you make Atlanta pass to beat you. And that's actually the strength of your team, is dealing with a passing game. I hope they look at that film and they're mad and they come out emotional, realizing that you win and you've got a great shot of getting into the postseason. Even if you don't get in the postseason, you have a winning record. You meet your record you had in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
You look like a team that's starting to figure itself out. Granted, it's week 18 and people, get frustrated with that because you should have known what you were in September. But I'm going to say, as soon as we all come back, I'm going to say that Carr coming to a new team with new teammates takes him 8 to 10 weeks to figure out route. Carr playing better over these past 4 weeks shouldn't be an unexpected thing. That sounds like an excuse, but it really isn't, because some guys take longer, especially if you don't have a very good play caller. Some guys, it takes longer for them to figure it out.
Yeah, Alan, it does, and that's what I was telling people. I do, and that's what I was telling people at the beginning of the season. When all these people were saying, "Oh, yeah, this is going to be this offense is going to put up numbers that we haven't seen since Drew Brees was in his prime," and because of all the talent that they have on paper. The refrain for this year, on paper, I was like, well, hold up a second now. You still have concerns on the offensive line, which really never have gotten rectified. And the fact that you have a new quarterback, working with new receivers, working with a new play caller, I, for one, hoped it would take 4 to 6 weeks at the most. So shame on these guys for not getting it down, at least to pick up your basic concepts. And then to get a good enough feel for your teammates, especially your receivers and hot routes and things like that. That's the kind of thing that would have taken 8, 10, maybe 12 weeks. So yeah, I see what you're saying, and I agree with you that it shouldn't be unexpected that Carr is playing this well recently. It just should have happened weeks and weeks before it did, but it didn't. So I mean, here we are. It is what it is. We're at least now finally seeing this close to the Saints offense we thought we'd see.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Um, that was a part that I really was concerned about, because I felt like I think it was a Jacksonville game where, Carr's yelling at his receivers about running the wrong routes and things like that. That's really when it kind of came to a head.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like after the bye, mini bye, they should say. Yeah, I know. We've having problems all night, Jerry. Um, After the mini bye, it seemed like they kind of got back on the right page. And then you had the 3-game losing streak. You had the Vikings, the bye, the Falcons, and the Detroit. And it feels like that this team should be peaking, but they should have peaked earlier in the season.
Mm-hmm.
And then you couple that with the defense falling off, because this is the other thing I was telling people. In the first couple of weeks of the season, the defense looked like what we thought the defense was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Shut the run down, make teams pass, get the turnovers, get after the quarterback. And then it was like when the calendar changed to October, suddenly the defense wasn't as good as it used to be. And they're probably the last couple of games that were good were the Texans and Jacksonville. And after that, they just could not stop a running quarterback. They couldn't stop a running game. They weren't even eliminating passing threats either.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's gone downhill ever since. So kudos for the defense to stand up and go after Baker Mayfield and do the things that teams had done to Baker in the past. Make him get in his face, make him move off his spot, get uncomfortable, force balls that he doesn't want to throw. And it just seemed like it took forever for the defense to get to that point again, while the offense slowly started to put stuff together that's still not great, but they're starting to put things together. I don't know. It's just there's so many moving pieces to this. That's why I said the Saints are like a box of chocolate right now.
Yeah, and that's such an accurate assessment. And now you're facing an Atlanta team that that wants to and does play a very physical brand of football, but has the athletes. Atlanta's offense has the athletes, that can get to the edge, which is an area that the New Orleans defense has really struggled this year. So are the Saints? I don't know if you might have realized it, Alan, but folks, I don't know if many of you realize the last 3 times that the Falcons and Saints have met, Atlanta has rushed the ball for over 200 yards each time. That is an appalling number. And if it doesn't, if Atlanta puts up 200 yards again, I know the Saints swept them last year, but if Atlanta puts up 200 yards again on Sunday, I don't think the Saints are a good enough complementary team to overcome that for a win.
No, they're not. And that's the thing. The Saints last year, if they got behind by 2 scores, I'm like, they're not going to come back. They're not going to
Mm-hmm.
make, they can't even play in a shootout. But this team, it's like, okay, you get behind by a couple of scores, but you suddenly seem to turn it on in the fourth quarter. Well, it's too late. It's And then the defense can't get those stops they need to get either. So that's what really makes it bad. The defense has to get after Atlanta early, and the offense has to get up on them early. Um, uh, One of the things that concerned me watching that Tampa game, and you probably noticed it too, once the Saints were up by 20 points, it's like Dennis Allen goes into that comfort mode of protect the lead. And I know that's a philosophical mentality because Jim Mora did it, Bum
Mhm.
Phillips did it. What do they have in common? They're defensive minded coaches. We're going to win with our defense and special teams. Our offense is not going to make mistakes because, as Bum Phillips says, you throw the ball, three things can happen, and two of them are bad. So it drives me crazy because if that's the criticism of Allen that I think is dead on,
Yeah.
that he is not aggressive enough and he takes his foot off the gas pedal. I don't need to score 30 and 40 points a game. I don't need that. But what I do need is a team that's putting drives together for touchdowns after you build a lead because you're running the clock, but you're also moving down the field and getting points. Um, that's what they have to do against Atlanta because you've got to make Atlanta abandon the run. When they abandon the run, they lose every single time. So that's the
Yeah,
key for Atlanta.
not only do they lose big, because Atlanta just they don't have an NFL caliber passing attack. And if you're Dennis Allen and that staff, you have to recognize this kind of thing, and know that if you do exactly what you just pointed out, get up a couple scores on them, and make them realize that you're not going to take your foot off the gas, because if you know that a team that's ahead of you is going to go into a little bit of a shell, then you don't necessarily have to abandon your game plan. You could just keep chipping away, assuming you have the time. You could just keep chipping away, and that's what we saw Atlanta almost do to the Saints in last year's second meeting, where Atlanta ultimately lost. These Dennis Allen teams, you're up 17-0 on Green Bay, you lose. You give up a big lead, almost give up a big lead to Tampa Bay. Last year you almost lost to Seattle because you took your foot off the gas. You lost the second time to Tampa Bay because you took your foot off the gas. Almost blew a lead to Atlanta the second time because you took your foot off the gas. There's a recurring theme here, that and I it makes me agree with you that is one of the handful of criticisms of Dennis Allen that are dead on 100% accurate.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, because if I had my choice, Penning, not Penning. I'm sorry. What's his the Cincinnati quarterback?
Ritter.
Ritter. Sorry, Ritter. Not Heineke, because Heineke is a competent quarterback. He's
Mm-hmm.
running an incompetent system, but he's a competent quarterback. So, uh, yeah, Ritter, I'd rather see in there because he's going to run on you, but I also know he's going to throw a lot. He throws 50-50 balls. 50% are going to go to his team. 50% are going to go to your team. And that's the guy I want to force into a shootout with the Saints. I want this to be a game where Atlanta feels like they got to pass on
Mm-hmm.
every down just to stay in the game. Because we are up by 14 to 20 points and we're moving the ball at will. B, we're running the ball effectively, so we're getting out of second and third and long, so we're converting drives. And C, I want Atlanta to abandon the run
Yeah.
because I do not fear their receivers. I don't fear their passing attack. I think that's the kind of game that the Saints pass rushers can actually play against and get to Ritter effectively. I really don't want Heineke out there because I think Heineke at least makes that passing game somewhat competent because he'll throw the ball to Bijan Robinson, he'll throw the ball to Kyle Pitts, he'll figure out ways to get the offense moving. Ritter will not.
No, I agree with that, and I see. I understand why a lot of people are saying that they'd rather the Saints face Heineke than Ritter because you see the running quarterback factor and the fact that that gives the Saints fits. But I see the same thing that you see. I think Taylor Heineke is a very capable quarterback. If he was the backup on my team, I'd feel pretty confident he could win me some games if he had to come in. And you're right. Even though their system itself is beyond incompetent, and beyond archaic, Heineke still has the wherewithal, to go through his progressions and find a Kyle Pitts, find a Jonnu Smith, put the ball in a position where a Drake London can get it, get the ball to a Bijan Robinson on the run coming out of the backfield. So yeah, I think, Ritter, on the other hand, is a guy, he's going to get rattled if you get some pressure on him. He throws a lot of 50-50 balls. He's a generally inaccurate quarterback as it is, and their offense, especially if they can't run the ball effectively, just seems like it spins its wheels a lot more with Desmond Ritter than it does Taylor Heineke.
Yeah, and I expect Heineke to start honestly, because believe it or not, Atlanta has a shot at winning the division.
Yes, sir.
They need us to lose and Tampa to lose for them to win the division. I thought they were eliminated last Sunday, but I was wrong. I don't think they can get a wild card though.
No, they cannot.
Yeah, I think they can only win the division. But no, so that's why this is so important that Dennis Allen does not take his foot off the gas. He has to put the pressure because that's how you help your defense,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really how you need to go into the playoffs too. I understand the Bum Phillips and Jim Mora philosophy. The Bears won a Super Bowl with it. The Giants won a Super Bowl with that mentality. But that ain't the 85 Bears defense. That's not the 86 Giants defense out there. It's not even the 92, 91 Saints defense. This team can't win games like that. And this is why I started talking about the Lions Cowboys game. The way they call games today, they love these close score, one score games where there are these comebacks late and sudden wins, where a team looks like it's winning the whole time. And at the end, oh my God, they lost.
Yep.
They love that stuff. They're going to call a game so it goes that way. So we can't play a game that way. I don't want this game to come down to the last possession because we're not going to win that kind of game.
No, you're not. And also in this day and age of the NFL, even if you did have an 85 Bears or an 86 Giants or a Dome Patrol, the game isn't geared that way. It isn't called that way. Yes, the Saints might be more skilled on the defensive side than the offensive side, but it's so much easier for Goodell's goons to throw the flag on the defense than it is the offense, as we've seen week in and week out. So, again, if you yourself have a system and a strategy and a philosophy that plays things close to the vest, in my opinion, you're almost asking for trouble late in the game. You just have to have, even if you aren't an offensively explosive team, you have to have a killer mentality. And when when you have your foot on the throat of the opponent, you have to finish the job. And that's not something that Dennis Allen or this staff possesses for the most part.
Yeah, and I think that's if there's a the legitimate criticism we mentioned of Allen, there's one glaring weakness of Allen's. It's the lack of that killer instinct, that finish him. Sean Payton had that in spades, and it's weird that Allen did not learn that from Payton.
Yeah.
You've got to finish an opponent off. And Peyton learned that from Parcells.
Mm-hmm.
That's how Parcells played the game. And Parcells a defensive-minded coach too.
Mhm.
But the key is you've got to do that. You've got to finish an opponent off. And to me, that's why Dennis Allen's records is the way it is. That's why he gets called out as much as he does. Because other than that, he's actually, God, I can't believe I got to say these things.
I was going to say, be careful.
Yeah, he's not an idiot coach. He can actually coach. Okay, he's not a great coach, but he's not an idiot. I mean, I've seen idiots coach this team. Mike Ditka was an idiot. Even if the game passed him by, Mike Ditka was an idiot. J.D. Roberts, John North, Tom Fears, all those guys were idiots. They didn't know the first thing about coaching an NFL team. Allen at least knows that. His problem is he doesn't see the whole picture, number one, and number two, his cautious attitude and his attitude of being a defensive-minded coach costs him too many games.
Mm-hmm.
And you listed all of them, and that's why one of the reasons why this team is 8-7 or 8-8. Sorry, 8-8. The talent level's 8-8 in a lot of key areas. The coaching is really 5-12. But it's 5-12 because of the decisions they make and the things that they do. It's not that they're stupid; they're just not aggressive enough. And then when they are aggressive, it's aggression without a plan.
Mm-hmm.
It's just being aggressive just to be aggressive. If you're going to go for them 4th and 5, you want to go for it with a this is a play I'm going to run because I love this play.
Yep.
Every time we ran this play, it worked. It's again going back to the Lions. One of the reasons why the Lions got in trouble with the officials on that 2-point conversion, they decided we love this 2-point play, this tackle eligible play. Way we're going to fool Dallas is we're going to send 3 tackles to the official, and the tackle is going to tell the official, hey, I'm eligible on this play. Instead of just rubbing his chest like they normally do, the official sees it because the other team sees you do that too. Dallas had no clue who was eligible on this play. So that's why he was so wide open. And of course, they screw the pooch because they have no idea that, it's like my wife talking to me. I saw the lips move, I heard the voice, but it didn't register in the brain, I can say because she sent me the meme.
Yeah, fair.
She sent a picture of the official. No, she sent a picture of the lineman talking to the official, and it says me, and it's the official's my husband whenever I'm talking to him about something important. So, but yeah, so if you want to sum up why Allen is the way he is, that's it. That's what's wrong with him, and that's the difference between him and Sean Payton.
Yep.
Real quick, I want to get your thoughts on this. Speaking of Sean Payton took the arrow today or last week. He benched Russell Wilson, not for performance reasons, but because the front office wants to part ways with him, and they don't want to have to pay a bonus. So it's all the business side. And a couple people, Michael Strahan was one of them, understand that. They don't like it, but they understand the business side of it. It's clear the Broncos want to move on to a different quarterback. Peyton wants his guy at quarterback. But Peyton's come under tremendous fire. You would think he benched Tom Brady the way they're talking. What is your impression of this? And Do you think the Saints should make a similar move with Carr, with Kamara, with Marshawn Lattimore, something like that?
Uh, as far on the Sean Payton side of things, uh, that's Sean Payton. We came to know him well, and loved him for a lot of that. But Sean Payton is a ballsy guy, and that's who the Denver Broncos got. And it's clear that because they're supporting Sean Payton over quarterback Russell Wilson, that it's clear that that's the kind of guy that the Denver Broncos want. I agree with you, and I suggested this at the very beginning of the year, that Russell Wilson would end up. I'm not going to call him the scapegoat, but Russell Wilson will end up playing his last year in Denver because Sean Payton is ultimately going to want his quarterback. And I think for all the reasons Payton has come under fire. Oh, he's been after Russell Wilson since day one, barring his personal trainers from the facilities and BS like that. Everybody that's saying stuff, almost everybody that's saying stuff like that, are not former players, NFL players. So like you said, Strahan and others, they clearly don't like it. Russell Wilson seems to be a very well-liked individual in the NFL community, but they understand that it's the business side of things, and that's what Sean Payton has his eye on. And let's face facts with Sean. The reality with Sean Payton is this too. Any team that Sean Payton is on, Sean Payton has to be the marquee face of that franchise. And as long as Russell Wilson is in that building, that's not going to happen. Yes, I know that there was Drew Brees here, but with Brees, it was always Brees and Payton, Brees and Payton, Brees and Payton. They almost equal credit, as equal as you can get when you have a star quarterback. Payton understood that, but his ego, his ego was always going to win over Russell Wilson. But let's face reality too. Even when the Denver Broncos went on their winning streak, it's not that Russell Wilson was playing poorly, but Russell Wilson was not the reason that the Denver Broncos were winning. The reason was complementary football on offense, better football on defense, and just a couple of good bounces. Let's face reality too. Sean Payton's also no dummy. He recognizes that. He recognizes that he has a quarterback in sharp decline, and that his system, Sean Payton's system, is not going to work until Sean Payton gets his guy. That's what it came down to at the end of the day. Now, go ahead before I go to the second part.
Okay, so to dovetail what you said, when Sean Payton got here in 2006, and that's the famous game from 2006 right there. When he got there, first thing he did, got rid of Aaron Brooks. Aaron Brooks was still under contract, but they got rid of Aaron Brooks. Wayne Gandy had a recliner in the locker room in front of his locker. Sean says, "Whose is this?" And they told him who it was, and Wayne Gandy was a captain on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And Sean instructed not to get it out of the locker room. He told the Saints training staff, take that to the dumpster. And they threw it out. Wayne Gandy went out not long after that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dante Stallworth,
#1 draft pick, impact receiver. He was traded to Philadelphia. You go with a 7th round pick in Marcus Colston because he's your kind of receiver. There's Joe Horn right there. Joe Horn didn't last long on that team. He was the face of the franchise during the Hazlitt years. He told Joe Horn at the Dallas game when they scored 42 points, we don't need you to do. Look what we did without you. We don't need you to score 42 points. And Joe Horn was a Falcon the next year. And he was also on his way out. And I love Joe Horn. Joe Horn's one of my favorite Saints players ever. We've had him on this show. But that was the business side. Payton is going to get his people in the building and make this his team that they all buy in on. And that's what he's doing in Denver to me with Russell Wilson. because this is a shot across the bow. Just like Pierre Thomas beating out that kid from Ohio State, the running back. Um, I don't care who you are or how you got here. I want the best 53 guys who buy into my system and make it work. And that's what he got here. Why this team was so successful, that's what he's trying to do at Denver.
Yep.
So that led to my second part of the question. So Dennis Allen, I promised we weren't going to do this, but I'm going to have to bring it up anyway. Dennis Allen inherited Sean Payton's team, is trying to win with a lot of Sean Payton's players. He brought some of his players in. Does Dennis Allen need to do something like this and get rid of some of the marquee players here so he can have his players on this team? Or is it not the same dynamic? That's part of that culture that the Saints want to hold on to.
I don't think it's the same dynamic, and Dennis Allen is certainly not the same kind of big personality that Sean Payton is too, which helps. Now, if you had a star player making some legitimate noise, especially publicly, but it doesn't have to be publicly, it could be privately too, making some legitimate noise that's going to cause some discord, in the locker room, maybe between the offense or the defense, or between a fraction of the players and the coaching staff, then you have to make that move. No matter how big a personality you are, you have to keep control of your team. I know Chris Olave has made some poignant reactions. Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas have made some poignant reactions. I don't think any of that is big enough to say we got to cut ties with this player. Well, Mike Thomas is going to be a free agent at the end of the year anyway. If you're specifically pointed towards the quarterback position, as I tweeted yesterday evening, as I was watching comment after comment after comment come in. Oh, the Saints need to draft Michael Penix, or is still with the Saints need to draft Jalen Daniels. Guys, listen, and I promised I wouldn't do this tonight, but here we are. If Dennis Allen is your coach next year, and by all accounts, I believe he clinched coming back for next year with that job against Tampa last week. If Dennis Allen is your coach next year, Derek Carr is your quarterback. Period. Exclamation point. End of story. And it has nothing to do with contract. Yeah, the Saints are tied financially to him, but the Broncos are tied financially to Russell Wilson. If you want to make a move that badly, you're going to make a move. No, the Saints will not draft a quarterback with their first-round draft choice, because Derek Carr is Dennis Allen's quarterback. I'm going to say that again. Derek Carr is Dennis Allen's quarterback. This is who the franchise decided that they wanted to go after, because that's who their coach wanted. As long as they're going to keep that coach, they're going to keep that quarterback. Those two are tied together like Titanic and the iceberg, like it or not.
What an analogy. And that's why people want Dennis Allen gone. They want Mickey Loomis gone. They want a lot of people gone from this team because they want Bo. To me, you're not going to get it. And the reason why you're not going to get it is because the Saints staff, front office personnel, and the coaching staff looks at the big picture. Okay. Mm-hmm. They're not looking at, okay, who's the face of the franchise? What kind of offense do we want to run? All that. They're not looking so much at that. They're looking at this team, and they're going, we only have 2 picks in the first 100 players right now. Can we trade somebody first off and get high draft picks? That's a possibility.
Sure.
And it won't be the guys that people talk about, the Alvin Kamaras, the Marshawn Lattimores, those kind of guys. That's not who teams want. They don't want those guys. If they do, you're not going to get a first-round pick for those guys. You're getting a day 3 pick, because those teams aren't going to sacrifice a lot to get those guys. Mm-hmm. Those teams are going to be like, no, if you're having a fire sale, I'm waiting till you're ready to sell.
Yeah.
and I'm gonna come get bargains. I want to
Yeah.
get bargains.
Yeah.
Um,
It would more likely be a Paulson Adebo or a Chris Olave, a young guy on a rookie deal that's on the verge
exactly.
of stardom. And at that point, if you're going to move guys like that, then you really got to question the direction of the front office, because this was supposedly going to be the core of what you're trying to build, what you're trying to retool with.
Yeah, you're almost taking 3 steps backwards. To take 1 step forward. You were able to move Jimmy Graham because Jimmy Graham was playing at an all-pro level. He
Mm-hmm.
had just scored, I think he had 15 touchdowns the year before in 2013. Um, you know, a team like Seattle was willing to burn a number 1 draft pick for him because they felt like we can use a guy like that who scores a lot of touchdowns to help our team. Okay. You don't have that kind of player out there. There's no player out there who is a double digit touchdown guy, a difference maker like that on this roster anymore. Jimmy Graham was once, same with Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks was a guy who had just come off of a 1,000-yard season, had, I think, 9 touchdowns that year. That was, let's see, in 2016, the Saints had a 5,000-yard passer, 2 1,000-yard receivers in Thomas and Cooks, and they also had a 900 and something yard receiver in Willie Snead,
Mm-hmm.
and a 1,000-yard rusher with Mark Ingram. So they looked at that as, hey, this is a guy, is a speed guy. We've seen him go out there and light up teams. I might be able to do. The Patriots are like, this is the guy that Brady needs to get us 1 more ring, which he did. That was low first round picks. Okay. Yeah. The Saints don't have those kind of players to part with.
Maybe in Kamara, but we saw how the league in general feels about the running back position. So again, even though Kamara is still a top tier running back, he's a running back, and he's a running back that's going to be 30 years old. You ain't going to get a first round pick for him. Did we freeze?
I'm sorry, I missed most of what you just said about Kamara.
I said, when you talked about Graham and Cook, and when they dealt them the type of player that they were, you could make a case for Kamara still being a top tier running back, and I think that he is. But the fact is, he's a running back, and he's a running back that's 30 years old. You ain't going to get a first round pick for an Alvin Kamara, but that's the only guy that on this roster that you could really say could be comparable to what the Brandon Cook situation was or the Jimmy Graham situation was.
And you'd have to get a team like the Eagles or a team like the Rams, maybe. I'm trying to think of some teams out there. Dolphins, somebody like that who has a high-powered offense that could use Kamara the way they want to use him. Like the 49ers are doing with Christian McCaffrey. But what did they get? What did the the Panthers get for Christian McCaffrey? They got next to nothing, really. You didn't get a first round pick for him.
No.
I think they got a second and a fourth or something like that. Something ridiculous, Or look at the draft. Look at the trade that the Eagles made for DeAndre Swift from the Lions. Not much there. We traded away Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. We didn't get very much for him either. Teams are holding on to those high first and second round picks now because they want to be able to build with young players. This is what the league now encourages because of the rookie salary cap. So it's so hard to get rid of players for high draft picks unless you have a team at the bottom of the draft who's looking at the draft going, this is a better player than what I could possibly get at 28, 29, 30. You know, that, and this player is probably the kind of player who's going to elevate my game, you know, elevate my team's play. And you're an 8-8 team. There's not a whole heck of a lot they're looking at on your team that you can sit there and say, yeah, that's the guy who's going to elevate the play on my team.
Nope.
Not unless you're going to sacrifice your youth movement. And Chris Olave is one of those kind of players. Rashid Shaheed probably is one of your those kind of players you probably get something for. Not a first round pick, but probably something in the top 100. But do you really want to sacrifice that? Who you got to replace him?
Exactly.
It's just it's a lose-lose. So again, going back to your comment about Allen and Carr, the team knows this. So they're going to go, we need to build our offensive line. We need to get a pass rusher. We need to make this team better. And if this team goes 5-12 next year or worse, or they finish at the bottom and they have a top 10 pick, guess what? They got a top 10 pick now with a second round pick, a third round pick, a fourth round pick. You've got a much better draft opportunity in 2025. So that you have to look at the long-term goal of this. I don't think the Saints are going to trade up. I don't think they're going to trade down either because it's not in their DNA. But they're not going to go crazy in free agency. They're going to restructure a couple of deals so they can get under the cap. Probably get some bargain players again. You know, it's going to drive people crazy, but that's what they do. They bargain shop for some players and roll with Carr and Allen again, thinking that if we we get better coaches on the staff, especially offensive coaches, that the NFC South's still going to suck next year. You know, no matter what happens. Where's Carolina going to go? You know, I mean, honestly, the deepest pass, the longest throw anybody made for Carolina this year was the owner throwing drinks all over the Jaguar fans. So the Saints know this. They don't even have a first round pick. You thought the Saints losing the 10th overall pick was bad? Losing the first overall pick of the draft when you were this bad.
Yeah.
And you have no coach. And who's going to want to come to that team? You've got an owner who's a meddlesome owner. You know, who's going to want to play for that team? Who's going to want to coach that team?
Yep.
You know, Jerry Jones has already gone through all the puppets. I mean, honestly, you know, unless you're going to you think you can go pull Jason Garrett out of the television booth and get him to coach your team, you know, I don't know. So they're going to stink. Atlanta's not going to draft a quarterback. Atlanta's looking for a veteran quarterback.
Yep.
The only thing that kind of worries me a bit, I can see them selling the farm to go get Justin Fields if the Bears were to decide to go get that quarterback. You know, I don't know if they'll do that or not. Because the rumor is the Bears aren't going to take a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've got the number 1 overall pick, and I think they got the number 9 pick right now. So they could probably ransom that number 1 pick off which is what they want to do for a slew of picks. So a team like Washington, Minnesota, one of those teams they think is going to pay the price to go up there to go get whoever they want as quarterback, whether it's Penix, whether it's Daniels, whether it's Caleb Williams. You know, that's what they're gunning for. They want to auction off that number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, so, and then in those kind of scenarios, then that leaves maybe a Kirk Cousins up for grabs if you're Atlanta and want a veteran. You know what's going to happen in Cleveland with Deshaun Watson? What about Oh, I feel like I'm missing a veteran quarterback out here now. What Russell Wilson? Russell
Yeah.
Wilson's going to be out there. Yeah, but to your point, Atlanta, although they have some, they have an offense and a defense both full of number one draft choices, but none of them are proper fits. There's no puzzle here. They're all
Mhm.
nice individual pieces, but when you take a step back and you look at the puzzle, you're like, none of these pieces fit
Mhm.
next to each other. I don't know what this franchise is doing. And you said it about the Falcons on our Bayou Blitz draft coverage, and you've
Mhm.
been 100% accurate. Then you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now Tampa Bay has overachieved, in my opinion, this year. And they do have some talent, but overall, this is still an aging team, with some critical holes to fill that I still think is going to go down before they go back up. Again, to your point, the NFC South doesn't look like it's going anywhere anytime soon.
Right. I look at Tampa kind of like the 2013 uh, New Orleans Saints. You had what was left of the core of the Super Bowl team from 2009. Um, and you now have, instead of having Drew Brees, you now have you have Baker Mayfield. So you're going to make a decision. You're probably going to pay Mayfield as opposed to taking your chances with him going in free agency and trying to do something in the draft. If something falls to you, great. But chances are Mayfield's going to be your coach, your quarterback next year. So yeah, and then your Tampa, you're looking at the rest of the league and the rest of the division, going the same thing the Saints are saying. Look, we could probably win this again because let's assume they're going to win the division Sunday. They're thinking we could probably win this again for the fourth time. The Saints aren't getting any better. The Falcons certainly aren't getting any better. The Panthers aren't, they're going to be cannon fodder for a while. Um, so we can still win this, and if we can string together, get a couple players, maybe get our running game a little bit better, we can go and do something. We can make a run because um, we don't think that Detroit is legit is building for the long term. We don't think we see a lot of cracks in Philadelphia right now.
Mhm.
Um, Dallas plays like hell at home, but when they're on the road, they're garbage. So they're looking at this conference as the 49ers, the only problem we have. And if we can shut down Brock Purdy or put pressure on Brock Purdy, we probably can beat them. And who knows when Christian McCaffrey is going to hit that wall,
Mhm.
so these teams are looking at this conference as very beatable. Just we need to put a couple pieces into place and do things. So this is not to sugarcoat and say, oh yeah, the Saints are going to win 12 games next year or anything like that, or the Bronco or the Bucks are going to win 12 games or anything close. It's just that there's not an incentive to go out there and make radical changes and restructure your whole team by building around a rookie quarterback because, man, you look at the NFL, take the Texans out because the Texans obviously is the one everyone's looking at right now.
Mhm.
But you look at the Jets, the Panthers, the Bears, all these teams that drafted a quarterback number one overall, highly touted. And what happened with these guys? They didn't win games. They didn't take that. They're not a Lamar Jackson. They're not a CJ Stroud. It more likely than not, I'm gonna draft me another Zach Wilson. I'm gonna draft a Justin Fields who, yeah, he makes some plays, but he makes a lot of damn mistakes. I'm gonna get a Sam Howell. I'm gonna have something like that. I'm not going to get that difference maker. So maybe I don't need to grab that quarterback right now unless I got most of my team together and a quarterback's what's missing, like the
Mhm.
Minnesota Vikings team, because a rookie quarterback throwing to Justin Jefferson sounds awfully exciting. Um, So that's all I'm saying with all this.
Yeah.
And there's no law saying the Saints could take a quarterback in 2025 or 2026. I know, and it's just every year we get obsessed with this group, and we got to find, and it helps. It helps for a lot of people that Jalen Daniels is in this. He's an LSU quarterback. We can get our second bite at the Joe Burrow apple.
Yeah.
We missed Joe Burrow the first time. We can get a guy who's almost as good, and he's LSU, and the fans will get excited because he's LSU. And your team isn't ready for a guy like Jalen Daniels because the players you have don't fit a Jalen Daniels system.
Yep.
You're going to have to do a lot of changes, and you've got a lot of holes in this team. I thought about that the whole time I was watching Alabama versus Michigan. How many times Michigan got in clean? They sacked Milroe 5 times in the first half alone. And it was these not too complicated blitzes. They were coming in, they were overloading the side, and the Alabama's offensive line wasn't picking it up, and they came in clean and hit him. I'm like, that's what they're going to do to Jalen Daniels. They're going to take the edges away, keep him in the pocket, and blitz somebody, and dare him to try and throw the ball because they like them. They're going to play the soft shell, so don't let them get behind you. And when that ball comes floating out in the secondary, make a play on it, But we're going to take our chances. We can hit that quarterback and kill him.
Yep.
And you can end up like the Colts quarterback out for the season by week 4.
Yep.
And
I know people are going to hate to hear this, but offensive line and defensive edge are the biggest 2 things that need addressed this offseason. When I say offensive line, I don't just mean tackles. Obviously Andrus Peat, who's a free agent anyway, he's not going to be. I think Peat has played some really solid football since he replaced Trevor Penning.
Yeah,
but Pete's not the long-term answer at left tackle. You know this. Ryan Ramczyk, at best, you're on borrowed time with him. So you need 2 tackles. Cesar Ruiz, who you just signed to an extension, he's not really going anywhere. But you have to find a way to turn that switch back on to make him look like the player that he was last year, because he's, again, the human turnstile that he was his first 2 years in. James Hurst. James has been a nice veteran acquisition, the kind of guy that you could bring off the bench and plug in multiple locations, but it's clear James Hurst isn't the answer as a starter at either tackle or guard. So you need 2 tackles and a guard, unless you think Nick Saldivari is the answer. And I like Nick coming out of college, but we haven't seen enough of him to know. So you need 3 new offensive linemen next year, and we know all about the edge. We've talked about it on this show week after week after week. The Cam Jordan at best is a rotational player now. Carl Granderson has had a breakout season, but he's not that difference maker pass rusher. He's not the guy that causes quarterbacks and offensive coordinators to stay up nights game planning for. You need that kind of guy, and the Saints don't have him on their roster. So, again, there's a lot of, and we haven't even talked about tight end, safety, off-ball linebacker. There's a lot of needs on this team, and even though the Saints need more consistent play out of the quarterback position, I've never thought that Derek Carr was at the top of the number 1 list of this team's problems.
Right, exactly. I'm defending Carr, but I'm not defending Carr.
Same.
The thing about Carr is he gives you some stability in the position. You may not like it. You may not think he's a very good quarterback. He can't carry a team. But you put enough pieces around him and you give him the protection he needs, he is going to be able to get the ball to playmakers so you can win a ball game. That is a lot different than quarterbacks who cost you a game because they're reckless or careless with the football. They can't make throws. They're very limited in what they can do physically and mentally as a player. Um, that to me, that's why Carr is not going to be. Is he worth $150 million? Well, it's not really what his contract is, but
Right.
he he is a what you're going to pay for a mid quarterback in the NFL today.
Hmm.
He's essentially, I hate to say it, but he's a game manager, and that's what you need a quarterback to do right now. He's not a playmaker; he's a game manager, and that's all you're trying to do is win games and have a quarterback who is going to win games for you, not cost you games because he gets the ball to the people he needs to get the ball to. But all that said, that miss on Penning is so huge for this team because he costs so many picks
Yeah.
that now you have to fix that again, and that's a problem. That's that's part of why this team is an 8-8 team. You've had too many of those things. You gave up a shitload of picks for Olave that you probably could be using right now to
Hmm.
get you to fix your linebackers, to fix your safeties. You can't rely on, okay, we're gonna be able to find a safety in free agency, or we're gonna be able to find somebody to come in like a Jonathan Abram who had a great game against his
Yeah.
old team. But he's not going to have those kind of games every week. He just knows Tampa that well. Um, and that's all part of the problem with this team is they're going to look at the big picture and say, look, we got to rebuild this offensive line. We got to find better players. We have to do a better job um, scouting and selecting these players and stop taking so many small school physical freaks because that's what
Hmm.
they do. They take physical freaks um, and not great offensive linemen and defensive linemen. You haven't done that in a long time. That was Cam Jordan was your last great defensive lineman you took because he was a productive player, not
Yeah.
because he was some kind of physical freak.
Yeah, I agree with you said about Cam Jordan. You can make a case for Sheldon Rankins too. Before Sheldon, wrecked his knee,
Yeah.
he was a disruptive interior player, and it looks like they have that. Said they hit on Breeze. Brisset, excuse me. So that's a big hit because now you don't have to worry as much about your defensive interior. But again, you still got to find that difference maker on the edge.
That's really what you're missing. You're missing somebody who they got to account for a Micah Parsons, someone like that. Um, that offensive coordinator says we got to figure out how we're going to handle this guy,
Yep.
not how we're going to stop him, how we're going to handle him, because your secondary is good enough that if you have a disruptive pass rusher that's getting in there, making impacts, disrupting a quarterback, that yeah, I know. Jim is we're gonna get a problem because I'm trying to share this. But Jimmy Gumbo mentions if we kept Hendrickson and dumped Davenport, uh the problem you have with Hendrickson and Nick Underhill has mentioned this now. Apparently the coaches didn't think much of Hendrickson.
Correct.
And that's why he's not with the Saints anymore. They thought he was a try hard effort guy
Hmm.
that really benefited from other players around him. And it's an unfortunate thing because you really blew it by not doing that. I
Yeah.
don't stay up at night. I don't stay up at night thinking about why we should have kept Hendrickson, but because I understood the logic, but
Same.
I don't like hearing that. You know.
Yeah, I'm with you. I hated to lose Trey even at the time, but I saw the logic behind it. First of all, Davenport was a number one pick, one that you gave up picks to go get. So a franchise is not going to be real quick to give up on that. Secondly, people forget that the year Hendrickson left, Davenport was coming off a pretty solid year. Not nearly as good as what Trey had, but it looked like, hey, the guy's finally going to stay healthy. The guy, when he's on the field, he was productive as hell. Now, of course, the year after he left, Trey left, Davenport went back to being Davenport. When he wasn't hurt, he did absolutely nothing on the field. But you can't blame him for seeing what they thought they had in Davenport and saying, okay, the lights, the switch is finally turned on for this guy. You folks are going to see what he can do, and you're going to forget all about Trey Hendrickson in a year and a half. Well, obviously that didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had 9.5 sacks or 9 sacks the same year that Trey got 13 sacks, and it was mainly because Trey had more snaps than Davenport, and Davenport was just physically bigger. He was faster, had a wider wingspan. If you did the eye test and put the two side by side, you're going, I want that guy. He's a monster.
Yeah.
I don't want that guy because he looks undersized, and it's one of the things it's been driving me crazy about Zach Bond right now. Our pass rush is so bad. We're getting people talking about Zach Bond and how the Saints screwed up. They didn't play him in his position he should have been playing at. Let me tell you something about Zach Bond, and I promise to be the last thing we're gonna wrap it up from here. But Zach Bond is a try hard guy from college football. Okay,
Yes.
he's undersized. He's not a quick twitch guy, as the scouts like to say. He's not an explosive guy. He's a guy who's tenacious. He is going to keep coming after you and keep coming after you, but he doesn't have a lot of skills as far as being a pass rusher. And if a 300-pound offensive lineman gets their hands on him, he's dead. He's not going to break that. If you watch the sidelines when they show it, Cam Jordan's trying to teach him how to use his hands to disengage. But if they get their hands on him, he's dead. But and there's a reason why Caden Ellis got it before Zach Bond did as far as a pass rusher. And Caden Ellis was a 7th round friggin' pick. Okay? Zach Bond is not Pat Swilling in the wrong position, or Ricky Jackson in the wrong position, or oh God, I can't believe I just forgot his name. Number 97 with the Saints. He was a defensive end in the pass rush. Ronaldo Turnbull. He's not a Ronaldo Turnbull. He's not one of those kind of guys. He's a try hard guy who is making plays because he's tenacious.
And Zach Bond, he has, and this is the move that everybody is retweeting on Twitter. Zach Bond has a vicious spin move. That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. Other than that, as you said, when you play him at a 4-3 defensive end, an offensive tackle gets his hands on him. Game, set, match. Now, I will say that the Saints have played Bond out of position, but that's because Bond was never, ever a fit for this defensive system. If you put Zach Bond in the Steelers system, he's going to be a 10, 12 sack a year guy, probably make a couple of Pro Bowls, only because the system is curtailed to that type of player. It's a 34 base. It gets those edge guys out in space, while you have your big bodies that tie up those 300 and 320-pound blockers. That's not the Saints. The Saints need their front four to create the havoc, and Zach Bond just doesn't have the physicality for that.
Right, and he's also going to get maybe 10 sacks with the Steelers because you got T.J. Watt on the other side.
That too,
That's got everybody's attention. He is a specific kind of player who has a specific role, and he can only come in on third downs and do. You don't want him out there trying to defend the run. You run the ball against Ricky Jackson, he's killing you. You
Hmm.
throw the ball against Ricky Jackson, he's killing you. Pat Willing was so damn explosive off the edge that he was beating offensive linemen out of their snap, out of their stance on the snap of the ball. He was already past them. So offensive linemen couldn't even put their hands in the dirt. They had to keep 1 foot back just to try and get even with Pat. You know, um, Bond's not that guy.
No.
Bond is he's not a Greg Lloyd. He's not a Kevin Green, who's also in the Hall of Fame. He's not those kind of guys. He is a try hard guy, and Jerry Westfall said it. He really is a Rudy. It's fun to like him. So I don't blame the Saints for trying to make him a true linebacker because they wanted to see if they could make him drop into coverage
Hmm.
because he's the kind of guy you want on your team. He is an enthusiastic guy who buys into it, and he's a rah guy, and he's that kind of guy. But he's just not talented enough to be a difference maker, and that's what you really need on your defense. Peyton Turner ready to break out yet? I don't know if Peyton Turner is even going to be on the field this week. That's something I was going to ask you about, Bob, with the Bayou Blitz. Since you're going to come on Wednesday, or are you going to come on Wednesday or Thursday night this week?
We're going to be Wednesday night this week, and then do our usual pregame on Sunday morning.
All right. So you might at least see in the injury report. Do you think Peyton Turner comes out this week?
I actually think Peyton Turner has a shot. A lot of us felt like that he had a shot to play last week. He's participating in practice more and more. Obviously, there are no more tomorrows if you lose to Atlanta. So I'll put it this way: Peyton Turner has a better shot at playing than Marshawn Lattimore or Michael Thomas does of being activated off injured reserve. We won't see either one of those guys. I think PT is probably a 50-50 shot, to play at maybe 60-40.
Yeah. And I really wish we were on a Thursday night or something like that when we'd see the injury report and see how much he practices. If he's in full practice on Wednesday and Thursday, then we have a good shot of seeing it. He's got to have at least one day of full practice. Alvin Kamara, do you think he'll play this week?
No, I don't, and that's just my own hunch. I feel very strongly that the Saints are going to play it coy with him all week. List him as day to day, but the reality is this: we believe it's a high ankle sprain. That's the same injury that's kept Kendre Miller out for 7 weeks. It's the same injury that's kept Marshawn Lattimore out for 6 weeks. We know what a high ankle sprain means for an NFL football player. So if it is indeed that, even if we see Alvin Kamara, and they're probably, like I said, they're going to play it coy. They'll probably even list him as a game time decision. I personally would be surprised if he played, and if he does, it's only going to be a handful of snaps in key situations, probably as a decoy role, because Alvin's not going to be able to cut on that leg. He's not. I know that's bad news. That's why I wrote the article I did for Saints News Network about Kendre Miller needing to be available, because I don't think Alvin Kamara is.
Okay, so then let's go to Kendre Miller since you wrote your article. Do you think Kendre Miller plays this week?
Yeah, I do. We were surprised Kendre didn't play the last 2 games because he has been a participant in practice. Not a full participant, but he's been out there every day and he's been working. Especially this last week against Tampa Bay, with Alvin Kamara dealing with the illness that he was leading up to the game. It was pretty much a shock that Kendre Miller was listed in on the inactive report. So I do believe that we'll see Kendre Miller. We will also probably see the Saints activate either the veteran James Robinson or the undrafted rookie Jordan Mims, from the practice squad in preparation for Kamara not being able to play.
I agree with that. Yeah, I I had to share that with you. I think they do play very coy with Kamara and say it's a game time decision, and they're going to say it's up to how much pain tolerance he has. as far as that. But I think if Kendre Miller is practicing every day, I think Kendre Miller gets in. I think you probably do see somebody come in, like a Mims or someone like that, activated because they can't go with just running one running back.
Yeah.
Uh, they need to be able to run the ball with multiple people, and I think that's the key to winning this game.
Mhm.
Do you think they win this game this Sunday?
Yeah, I do. I like the matchups that they have against Atlanta. Now I'm probably the kiss of death because I
Mhm.
picked the Saints to lose 4 out of the last 5 weeks. And they beat the Giants, they beat the Panthers, they beat the Bucks. So you watch them lose now that I'm going to pick them to beat the Falcons. I don't think the Falcons are a good football team in general. I think they've overachieved in a lot of their wins this year. They've gotten a lot by just being more physical than the other team. And I hope that the light finally turned on for New Orleans and they realized, hey, if we come out motivated, we still have enough talent on this team. That there's not a lot, that we can line up and beat just about anybody. And so hopefully this type of win that they got over Tampa Bay, who had been playing really, really good football,
Mhm.
that gave this team a jolt of confidence. That's going to carry them through and beat a far less talented Falcons team.
Yeah, I think this is a game that's very winnable. I think this is a game they should win. I think this is a game they will win. Um, but I think if they lose this game, it's because they did it to themselves. I don't
Yes.
think Atlanta can beat them straight up. I think the only way they lose this game, they lose a turnover battle. They struggle in the red zone, which they have not done, but they struggle in the red zone. Yeah, exactly. The defense can't stop the run. Defense is making mistakes because as long as they can avoid beating themselves and turning the ball over and things like that, they should take care of this team,
Mhm.
um, and win this game. So, saying that, do you think they make the playoffs?
I got a gut feeling that they do. I don't know whether it'll be because Carolina beats Tampa Bay. And I know the odds are against them. I don't know if it'll be as a wild card with Arizona beating Seattle and the Bears, who have lost 9 straight against the Packers and are 4-26 against them since 2009. Those statistics alone tells me that Green Bay is going to beat, or that Chicago is going to beat Green Bay. So I just have this feeling that the Saints are going to sneak into the playoffs. So yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and predict it.
Yeah, I don't think the Bucks will beat the Panthers. I'll be shocked if that happens. I think the Saints beat the Falcons, but I think they're gonna have to rely on the Cardinals and the Bears. The Bears would like nothing better than to screw over the Packers and not let them go to the playoffs. The Bears are playing for a playoff shot.
Yeah,
Um, I don't think they're going to be scoreboard watching so much as they just want to beat the Packers. Um, and the Cardinals, I don't know,
yeah,
because who would have guessed the Cardinals beat both the Eagles and the Cowboys in one season? Um, I think if they go old school like they did against the Eagles, they can beat the Seahawks because they didn't respond very well at home to the Steelers
yep.
playing old school with Mason friggin' Rudolph as your quarterback. I mean, I just didn't see that. To me, if the Saints make the playoffs, I think they make it as a wild card team. That means we got to watch Dallas and Philadelphia to figure out which one we're going to end up going to. Um, I don't know who I'd want to play out of those things. I just want to go to the playoffs. I don't
Yeah,
care. I
right.
don't think they're gonna. I don't care who they play. They're not going to get humiliated like people think. That's just not the way this team is made up. Um, they may get handled for 3 quarters, and all of a sudden, Carr's throwing bombs to make the score closer than it really is. But they're not going to get humiliated because that's just not how this team is built. They're a fighting team. Um, yeah, Philly New Orleans would be an interesting matchup. I just don't like. I would like Philly to play have to play their backup quarterback over Jalen Hurts,
Yeah.
Marcus Mariota, because I think that would be worth watching. Bob, I know we touched on it real quick. Anything else going on in Bayou Blitz tonight, tomorrow night?
I don't think so. I mean, there's so much to talk about anyway because of playoff scenarios, how this team is going to come out, and the potential job status of Dennis Allen, and mention a couple veterans too. Are we going to see the last of a Demario Davis or a Cam Jordan, Jimmy Graham, etc. So we'll probably talk about some of those players too. So yeah, no guests tomorrow. There's just too much else going on.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I kept you a lot longer than I planned on, and I apologize for that. I know you're fading fast. Thank you guys for sticking with us. I'm sorry for all the technical problems. I tried working my way through these things, but it is what it is. Next week, we'll know how the Saints season ends. If it ends next week, we could talk about building for the future. We touched on a lot of it tonight. I didn't really want to go that far, but we did. We'll go a lot further into that. But in the meantime, enjoy a Saints win. Don't get pissed off if they win because it ruins draft status. That's a stupid way of watching games. It really is. I can't be that way.
No.
Jeff, I'm glad you were able to join us tonight. So I know Bob's known you for a while, so I'm glad you were able to come on tonight. Thank you, Bob, for sticking with me as long as you did. I kept you up past 11 o'clock. I apologize. Anyway, you guys have a great weekend. Go Saints, and we'll see you next time Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.